really connect with your body, your mind, and your heart, all three get aligned, and you trust that, it's like, oh my God, the parts of your brain you activate that you don't normally activate, the ideas that can come through without even trying.
Our ever-changing world calls upon the most courageous, resilient, and relentless of us to face its most extraordinary challenges. To help you embark on this journey, we present the Impactful Coaching Podcast, your oasis for inspiration and a beacon to spark the fires of greatness within you. I'm Joseph. I will be your ally in this journey to empower your potential. Join us each week as we dive deep into the heart of ambition, drive, and success to unravel compelling stories of daring leaders who dreamed, struggled, and achieved victory. Our journey begins now. How is everybody doing? This is the Impactful Coaching Podcast. My name is Joseph. If this is your first time here, it is I was about to say luxury to have you. Sure, why not? It's a luxury to have you. And the goal of the show is to connect coaches to other coaches, connect coaches to potential clients, connect everybody to me, and then connect me to everybody else. Yes, I do have a stake in this as well. Why not be open about that? I'm here today with Katie Smith, executive coach of katiebsmith.com. Katie, how is everything doing today? How are you?
Great. It's been a really relaxing holiday, so I'm ready for the new year.
I made a point not to tell this story too many more times, but I'm going to milk it a little bit more, which is the beginning of my holiday season. I got COVID again for the second time. And it wasn't as bad as the first time, but I weaponized it a lot more this time around than last time. So I'm messaging all my clients saying, everybody, I got COVID. I can't work. I got to go deal with this." And like, the symptoms were not that far off from the cold. But if I tell like my Marine client that I have a cold, he's not going to accept that. But I told him that I have COVID. He's like, "All right, 10-4, little buddy, get some rest, good to go." So that was on my holiday started. But yeah, it's been. I feel like I'm picking up on an energy that a lot of people are going through. And just because, yeah, let's just warm up by asking this: have you found like getting back into work has been a little bit more like at a slow pace this time around than in the past? There's something about like getting the gears spinning again after experiencing like a nice period of relaxation. For me, it's been a little bit difficult, but I'm wondering if that's just me or if it's something that's happening a little bit more around the world.
Yeah, I sense it and I see it happening in my industry. I think everybody was so burned out and needed a rest. It's been a very chaotic year, a lot of change and a lot of upset, and just things are moving faster.
Yep.
And so we needed the break.
Yeah. And we're in 2024 now, which I'm not going to get into it, but there's a few things that are going to be memorable about it. So I'll leave it at that. But like some of the other clients that I caught up with, some haven't messaged me back, some have gotten extensive sickness. So I'm just like, all right, maybe it's time to wind down. First thing that we got to do, a little bit of housekeeping, is to always let the audience know what you do, what you're up to. So would you care to share that story with the audience?
Sure. I'm an executive and career coach, focusing a lot on leadership with executive talent as well as professionals, business owners, people in transition. It's really about looking at the mindset you live in now and the behaviors associated with that mindset and the mindset you really want to live in for the goals you want to create, for the life you want to create, for whatever the next iteration of your career is. And then really shifting that mindset so that you're already living in it to create it and the behavior associated with.
I think I can relate to a past experience like this. Now, mindset is a great topic. We do get to share in that conversation quite a bit, not just in this program, but in some of the other business to business podcasts I've hosted. It's come up, and it's always fascinating to talk to because it is ever shifting. And there were times where I would not be in a good mood. And what I tried to do was channel who I would be in a year from now and if I would still care about this in a year from now. It helped me rationalize my decision making. It helped me make sure that I was like setting up the foundation to get to that person. But it wasn't like hypnosis. I didn't
Mhm.
feel any better per se. I just got my control back. So what I would like to hear about in the realm of mindset is what's the realistic changes, and then what are the things that we fantasize we wish we could change that don't necessarily change.
Well, so it's really looking at, okay, you first have to identify a gap. right? This is where
Hmm.
you're living in now. This is the reality, but this is where I really want to be. And then what is the mindset associated to where I am now? What's the feelings associated with that? What's the behavior it's creating? And if I was living over here, what would I be thinking over there? How would I be feeling in that spot? And what would I be doing differently? How would it show up in my behavior and how I am in my life? So once you can identify the gap, then it's just taking those little baby steps to get me over there. And you have to break it apart and you have to have accountability. I mean, that's why people hire coaches, right?
Hmm.
It's the accountability because you're shifting a brain pattern in the frontal lobe of your brain. You're rewiring your nervous system. We're like a computer system. So it's kind of taking out the old software and putting in the new.
Do you remember what your gap looked like? Was it one serious, significant barricade, or was it several pieces that all had to be put together?
When I got into coaching, I mean, it wasn't really an industry. That was 14 years ago.
Hmm.
So only executives that were going to get fired had a coach. So it was like remedial. And, it was like bad news if you had a coach.
It also sounds like they were doing a little more like counseling and therapy rather than like,
Who knows?
yeah.
And I was, at the time, I was an executive retained headhunter. So I was working with CEOs to put their executive teams in place. And I was so tired of doing it. I'd done it for 12 years. I was kind of done. But a lot of the individuals I would place would come back to me and they would say, Katie, I'm having a problem with the CEO. So then we'd have these conversations around strategy, around what has to shift in this individual. They would go back and they would be fine. And I thought, man, these are the conversations that are actually creating sustainable change in the org. It's not just placing the talent. I wish I could get paid for these because I was getting paid to place the talent, not to have these conversations. At the time, I decided to hire a coach. I had a family member that was using one. So I thought, I'm going to check this out. So I hired a coach. She mentioned to me that I had all the components of being a coach, that that's really, you would get paid to have those conversations. And so I started exploring it. So it was a matter of really looking at, okay, what do I need skill wise to get over there, education wise to get over there? And then how am I going to make the shift in a pace that's going to work for me in my life? So that was definitely a time of shifting how I'm thinking about my life, where I'm projecting into the future, how I have to show up different. Because now I was building a business, I was getting trained, I was getting the skills to go into coaching and transfer my recruiting career into my coaching career.
Hmm. And that's a question that I like to ask quite a bit on the program is your core skill set that was with you prior to coaching. Did any of that serve you as you entered coaching?
Yeah, you know who Joseph Campbell is?
Joseph Campbell?
The great,
I can't quote him, but yeah,
he's the
I've heard of
greatest
him.
mythologist. So he discovered that every single person in the world, there's a pattern to our life. It's called the hero's journey.
Hmm.
Famous. Everything you're doing is setting you up for the next thing, even though you may not know that. What I realized was I'm coming back to having these conversations with people that help them be authentically who they are. I've been teaching yoga and meditation for probably 20 plus years. And that was a big piece of my life. Aligning, I mean, yoga means union of body, mind, and soul. It's about getting into alignment with who you are and why you're here. And so I wanted to bring that out more in my work. And that's what coaching does. It's getting you to trust yourself more, to tap into your own intuition, to, harness your own brilliance because you're here for a reason. And everything you're doing in your career track in your life is setting you up for that. Even though sometimes it's like, how could this be setting me up for it?
I'll pick an example just that actually this was yesterday. So, as I mentioned to you prior to recording, and what my longtime audience likes to hear about is the whirlwind of technical issues that I tend to face because I'm not just the host and most of the producers. There's a lot of like blinking lights. So I picked up a new computer on Black Friday, but I was reluctant to use it because I've had my laptops brick on me in the past, And so I wanted to slowly ease my way into it. And then my friends come over, they're in IT. They say, Joseph, you're out of your mind. Get the freaking computer working. What's the matter with you? Well, my hand was forced because I was trying to edit another program on my previous PC, and it just was not working anymore. As DaVinci Resolve, the video editing software, improves, the specs sort of increase. It's like an arms race. So if eventually the computer says, I'm sorry, I can't handle this anymore. So my hand was forced. I moved it. And I said, all right, Jen, you can have your dad's old computer. I don't need it anymore. Well, I get 10 minutes into an audio edit and my laptop totally shuts down. No light, anything. It nearly bricked. And so I take the 20 minutes to get to the computer store, all along the way trying to do what you're talking about here, which is how does this set me up for tomorrow? What is the silver lining of this? Because I just paid $1,400 for this computer. What is the lesson here? And so the computer is fixed. Everything is cool. It's just the battery freaked out because I overloaded it. It was my fault, 100%. I come home and I say, all right, Jen, I think I need to hold on to the other computer for a little while longer just in case I run into an issue. And that other computer may be the only other computer that can play Fortnite. So, I kind of wanted to hang on to it. But like 2 days later, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm really happy with my setup right now. So that was a situation where I thought to myself, okay, I have been in here before. There are positive things that manifest out of this. It's not clear to me right now because all I'm thinking about is my credit card bill, but something is going to happen. Something is going to happen. So that's just a small example of something that I think I can see what's happening, but I can't articulate what it actually is until it actually unfolds. So I'm going to throw it back to you, and I'm curious if you recall a story along these lines of like, okay, something is going on here. I could tell. I don't know what it's going to be, but I could tell something is happening. I would love to hear a story along those lines if you got one.
Oh my God, I think that happens every week, Joseph.
Okay, well, top three. I don't know.
I mean, when you think you want things to go a certain way
Yeah.
and they're going a different way, it's like, oh wow, this is an opportunity for me to allow, to let go of control, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because this need to have to control something, it's all based in fear. And it's like, well, actually, if I'm going to allow and surrender into this, it doesn't have to be as stressful. Just like you said, okay, there's got to be a silver lining in this, right? You automatically shifted your own way of thinking about it. My daughter's car quit working, or it was some transmission light was on. And my son was looking up all the things about Subarus and how they crash at 125,000 miles because of the transmissions. And she's at 125 miles. So, all this story is playing out in all of our heads about her car. And she goes into the Subaru dealership and they check it out. And they said, actually, we don't have to take the engine out. We don't have to take the transmission out. We just have to fix these two pieces. So it was like, okay, what a great way to start the new year. You don't have to worry about this issue anymore, right? Where she was coming from, oh my God, what a way to start the new year. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, maybe it's setting you up to have a great car the rest of the year.
I wanted to touch on something else that you said, and then I'm going to go to the next scripted question, which is you talked about that need for control and about learning to let go. And I experienced that quite a bit earlier on when I was investing a lot of money into trying to do my own comics label. I didn't get very far, but I did pay a decent amount of money for a lot of illustrators. And a lot of the times there was language breakdowns, there was miscommunication, there was ego clashing, because I want to respect the creative integrity of the illustrators, but it is also my writing. I'm paying it. So there's a lot of conflicts there. But typically what I found was a lot of the times I was more surprised and delighted by the illustrator providing work, and it didn't turn out exactly how I pictured it, but I liked what I saw, and I decided instead to take that and integrate that as to part of my preference and style for the future. And then now that I still can't afford to work with illustrators, but now that AI image generation is a sensible alternative, it's actually the same thing, even with the robots, is that no matter how specific I am with my prompt, and mind you, this will probably change in the next 3 years, but there's going to be more problems, right? It's not going to be all solutions. But I would type in a prompt and expect the image and go, well, it's not remotely close to what I wrote in the prompt, but I still like it. So I think a lot of just being able to like I don't know, just a casual wants or just casual like ideas or inclinations of what I'd like to see. But then to receive something completely different has actually been one of the best ways to build my point of view and build my perspective.
I totally agree because what happens when you let go is you open. Stress closes you down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Control is restriction in the system, in our system.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you let go and you learn to trust, it's going to, then you open up to way more possibilities, better than you could have imagined. But we've been taught the opposite in our culture, in our system.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got to shift it if we're going to innovate as fast as the technology is moving.
Well, that brings us really well into the next question that I wanted to ask. So, typically, what I do is I will always visit a guest website just to get a feel for not only what your brand is about, but what are the things that you put front and center as the impression that you want to leave with visitors. And on your website is a quote: "We are moving from the information age to the intuition age." And I just mentioned how I use AI, and I am a fan of AI, as I am a fan of a lot of the like 12 blinking things in my room right now. So I am very much a fan and a proponent, and in many ways I kind of have to survive a lot of this stuff because a lot of what I do well requires a lot of these blinking lights. And so there is no stopping the continued innovation of tech. And so when you mentioned on the website the need for the human side to also continue to innovate in the intuition space, I thought that was really fascinating. So I'd love to hear, I guess as a start, what is the premise so that you can articulate it, and then I might follow up with any number of things, including how you came to the idea.
AI technology is moving at the speed of light. And it's a really good thing because it is going to help us solve some really big problems. It's really important we learn how to befriend it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it can make our life easier. We don't want it to overtake us, like anything that's too good, too much. And I'm really seeing this a lot in my work with companies because they're realizing, even in leadership, how do we address the whole human, not just the results you've got to get, right? So we've got to have the balance of both. And intuition, when you are learning to let go of control, when you're learning to surrender, when you're learning to let your team take control of a project and fail, maybe, but they'll learn, right? When you're learning to really connect with your body, your mind, and your heart, all three get aligned and you trust that, it's like, oh my God, the parts of your brain you activate that you don't normally activate, the ideas that can come through without even trying, right? It's effortless. Just like you said, using the AI and, the designer, it's like, God, I was really happy with the design that came out. And I didn't have to work at it. It appeared and it was perfect. So it's like we have to shift how we're showing up and how we're thinking about tackling a problem. Because if we want to innovate and stay, balanced with that technology, we've got to access the deeper technology in us.
Mm-hmm. I'll share something with you that I picked up on with a lot of the people that I talked to in the Web3 space. Unfortunately, the Web3 space is volatile, so we ran out of funds for the podcast, but I would be happy to get back in the space because it's very much forward facing, and yet the conversations were still surprisingly spiritual in nature. And what I learned especially, is probably the thing that sticks out to me the most, is that because work contracts will actually shrink in terms of how long people are spending at certain companies, and then how long companies will exist for. Because a lot of these companies now, they're called DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, and a lot of these are purpose driven. What that means is they might have a mission to accomplish, like purchasing a copy of the U.S. Constitution. They didn't even know why they did it. They just wanted to do it. It took about a week, and they were able to raise $45 million, somewhere around there. And they didn't win. It was an auction, but they got really close for that minimum amount of time. And it got me thinking, that's a lot of elasticity that a professional has to have to move from one environment to the next and to try to get the ball rolling. And you don't have, you might not have 3 months to correct course. You might have a week to accomplish the mission. So this is a lot of pressure on people that not everyone is up to, especially because a lot of us are in the mindset of, well, we're working to survive. There are other things that we would prefer to be doing with their time. Sorry to say. However, what I also learned is that with metaverse, and this is the thing that actually got me to start liking metaverse, by the way, is that it is going to change how we work. It's actually going to inject a lot more fun into it, which is not an aesthetic thing. This is one of the most core elements to long-term satisfaction, productivity, skill, and results. So imagine instead of stepping into a boring office and having to endure an hour commute, you step into a virtual office that's underwater and the architects are showing things in 3D and you're really enjoying the entire process and it really activates the creative mind. So that's me tying in what I think we're getting at here is that we are looking for ways to actually improve our spiritual point of view in the world. So that's what hit me. I'll throw it to you to hear what your reaction to it is.
I totally agree. And your point, we have to become agile. We've got to be way more agile, way more nimble. We can't be dead set on doing something one way all the time. And we have to connect with the we, not just the me. We have to collaborate more. There's got to be more cross collaboration because ideas get spawned out of that one alone person could not think of. So I definitely agree with you on that, Joseph. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch and be a part of.
I'm absolutely looking forward to it. And again, it's scary for other reasons too. But as someone who has relied on tech so far, and who's also very polite when I talk to ChatGPT, let me just say, I always say, "How are you doing?" I always say, "Thank you" afterwards. It can actually tell when I'm in a bad mood because there's times where I just go on and I'm blunt with it. I'm like, "Oh man, I feel bad about that." So the next thing that I wanted to cover today, because you do offer a wide range of services, and I would guess the key one, but I will of course defer to your clarification on that. Is the be whole journey, and it sounds like something that's tying in a lot of what we're covering so far is the duality of both innovation in the tech, but also personal innovation. So I'd love to hear what this is, and what I will also maybe get at too is if we can get a case study in or two of maybe some of the people who've really seen that transformation. So I'd love to hear some of that context too if we have it.
So the Behold Journey it's an online self-paced program to my book, Be Happy Now, Claim the Life You Deserve. And it's broken into three components. So 3 month, 4 month segments. So it's mindful matters, right? How are you working with your mind and your thoughts and your thinking? How are you reprogramming the frontal lobe of the brain, basically? Body wisdom. How are you working with your body and your feelings to rewire the nervous system? And then awakening the heart. How are you really operating from that heart-centered space? Because we've got to have both head and heart. That's where we're transforming into. It's not just head driven anymore, right? It's there's got to be an alignment. And then my life is a legacy. What do you want to leave? I mean, what is your purpose here? So it's really looking at these elements of one's life and deciding, okay, what are the things that are getting in your way around each piece? What are the things you need to shift? What are some exercises and tools that can help you shift so that you're actually living into what you want to create? Because that's how we create whatever we want. We've got to start living into it. So the course supports you in going through that process.
The reason why I wanted to hear a case study or two is because when you're working with people at the executive level, there are a lot of spinning plates, and there is a heightened degree of pressure to be able to shift into that mindset that may be both preventative, but it may also be supportive in that if I don't make this change, I might not be able to maintain the responsibilities that I have. It's kind of up to you if you want to say the names or not. We're always big on protecting confidentiality, but I'd love to hear a story or two about how this really transformed somebody.
I have a client who works with a really large organization, and he's the new leadership coming up, right? And he would come to the call all the time and say, "Oh my God, I have this huge executive meeting and we're going to do the same thing. It's the same guys at the top wanting to do it the same way. It never works. We never get the results. And it's just so frustrating." We chatted about it. And so I asked him, I said, "Well, have you asked them what's keeping them from doing this? From doing the same thing if we're getting the same results?" He goes, "No, I haven't asked them that." And I said, "What's stopping you?" And he was like, "I don't know. I never even thought about it." So he went to the meeting. He asked the questions he needed to ask. He said all his peers were just shocked he was asking this because these were like the C-level guys.
Mhm.
And they ended up changing the whole trajectory of the project. And everybody was like so amped up and engaged. After the meeting, he got a phone call from the key executive. And he said, "I really appreciate you asking those questions because it really is going to make a big difference in how we navigate this project. And we're going to include you in some other meetings that we'd like to have you in on." So number one, he was building his brand and his messaging in the organization. He was stepping into more of his own leadership capacity, building his trust in himself to know what to ask, right? And to be able to ask in a way that's collaborative, not defensive or,
Mhm.
you know, judgmental. It's really him, in those moments when you're in that kind of pressure cooker, in those moments, you have to have strategy inside yourself of how to deal with the thoughts that are coming up. "Oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. What's he gonna, blah, blah, blah." And you got to deal with the tension you're feeling in your body. And you got to stay connected to your heart and what you know is true and trust that. It's like taking a risk on yourself, right? So it's incorporating those three elements. So it's an internal strategy so that he has the capacity. We know he has the capacity, but so that he has the guts and the confidence and the courage to engage in the conversation.
One thing that stuck out to me, especially when you were listening off what were all the benefits that he had got out of acting on this, one of them was that he had built up his brand within the company. And this is actually the first time that I've heard brand used in this way in the internal company complex compared to say I don't know, like a freelancer like me or just working with a different company. Obviously two different brands, and then you also have a company wants there to be an alignment of individuals because you would ideally form a company out of people who share your values, thus your brand. So what need does an individual have for a brand within that space?
So Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, I heard him describe this once. He said, "It used to be that we would get on an escalator, we get a job in a company, we'd get on the escalator, and our manager would promote us and his manager would promote him. We'd go up the escalator." Well, it doesn't work that way anymore. Now it's a jungle gym. You're on the jungle gym and you got to figure out, who do I need to align with in the org for where I want to take my career? You're in charge of your own career, not the company. So it's about taking more ownership and accountability around what you want to create in that organization. No different than if you're a business owner, you got to think about, what do I want to create in my business or in the world or the service or product I'm offering? So it's the same thing. You have to build your brand, how you show up, how you communicate, the competencies you exhibit,
Mm-hmm.
your presence, your executive presence, how you show up in a meeting. All that impacts the perception people have of you.
If somebody asks me to describe this later on, the way that I would characterize it is a difference between a lateral progression versus a vertical one, which is the same premise as what you're describing with the escalator versus the jungle gym, is that there is a little less of a gap. I mean, there's still a gap, obviously, but less of a significant one between, say, the C-suite and then the I don't know, the grunts, the people at the bottom. And it actually reminded me of when I used to be at a sales company and we were in the WeWork, may rest in peace WeWork. And because the company was only made up of people who were driving the brand, even though we were customer success specialists, we were still a key factor in this. And there wasn't anybody in in the custodial area, there wasn't really anybody in the building's logistics because that was all handled by WeWork. So all what I'm getting at here is if part of the company structure is to essentially only have roles that are about driving the brand forward, then I think that puts more impetus on each individual to focus on how they contribute to the company and how they can shape it. There's limits to this, obviously. Not everyone can make the calls like the CEO can or like the board can. But if I were to work for a company, which I haven't for like 8 years now, I wouldn't want to go in unless I'm actually making an impact in it, unless I have some sort of way that my contribution to it would have an effect on its DNA going into the future.
Well, yeah, and that's determined by every individual, right? What's the impact they want to make in the role, in the organization, in their career, right? So you have to develop your own strategy, whatever that is, for wherever you're at, and then build the roadmap. Okay, who do I have to connect with? What do I have to shift in me? What are my stretch points, right? Where do I have to be more courageous? Where do I have to take more risk? And what's stopping me from doing that?
The other part that stuck out to me from the story is I was wondering if you had received this feedback. Is that so? So the C-suite fellows were having a problem where they were just being recursive. They would just have the same conversations over and over again. They were basically living out the definition of insanity, and they had changed their ways as a result of the questions. But as far as I understand it, it wasn't a direct line of, okay, you guys need to change this. It was questions that got them thinking and changed their behavior. So did they actually, did this cause a reflection on how they were handling things in the past where, this issue that they were having where they were just talking about the same thing over and over again? Did they really change course on that as a result of this, even though that problem wasn't being specifically overtly addressed?
It was being addressed, but it
Oh,
was
it
being
was.
addressed
Okay.
through curiosity,
Okay.
not through telling you what you should do. Telling you what you should do is a turnoff. But if I was to say, gosh, well, I'm just curious, what's having us go down this same path when the results aren't where we want them? So you want to ask questions to activate awareness, to open a window in somebody's mind. Why are we doing this? Are we doing it because it's comfortable, because we're just in rote mode? This is what we've always done. Maybe we do need to change it up, right? As we move into this, age of technology and innovation and moving at the speed of light, we have got to be more curious with one another. It creates way more inclusion and way less defensiveness.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about, wearing a badge of honor on my sleeve like I'm an expert. Who wants to hear that? None of us do. It's more about, gosh, what can I learn from you and what can you learn from me? How can we collaborate to create something neither of us thought of? So they actually did switch directions.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to clarify on that one. So I'm going to chalk that one up to a blinking light syndrome. So I apologize for not quite catching it on the first go.
That's all right.
So you said that you had been in the industry. You said 14 years. 14 years. So first, like side question. This had cropped up earlier, but I had written it down so I don't forget. Which is when you were reaching out to a coach, how did you find the coach? Did you just figure out a website? Was it the yellow
Oh,
pages? Or
referral. A
oh, referral.
referral.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah. Someone I know was using this individual. I had a call with them and it was like, yeah, I want to do this.
The question that I wanted to get at is, with your legacy of experience, what issues do you feel like the coaching space is going through right now? And just so the audience knows, for those of you who maybe don't listen to every episode, I don't ask this question that often. Part of it is making sure that I defer to people who've built up enough experience to really speak to it. But what's your perspective on the coaching space right now? I guess especially how it ties into the intuition innovation discussion that we're having.
Coaching is like I said, when I started in it, it was remedial. Well, now everybody has a coach. It's democratized, right? It's come down through the levels. Every level is having a coach. It's way more. It's like yoga. When yoga started, I mean, I started yoga in my 20s. People thought I was in a cult, and now it's everywhere. So it's the same thing with coaching. And as a trained coach, there are certain competencies we have to embody in order to actually provoke awareness in our clients, to be able to lead with curiosity, to get out of our own way, that we think we know how to do it. We know how to do your life, which I don't. That's crazy, isn't it? So it's the importance, as coaching gets mass merchandised, that the coaches people are hiring, depending on what they're looking for and what their need is, that they're actually trained in these competencies. Because you're going to get way more value as the client. I mean, I've had people that have hired me and said, oh my God, I just hired this career coach and had a horrible experience. And it was like, gosh, well, what happened? I just didn't get anything out of it. I paid all this money, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, well, were they a certified coach? Oh, no, I don't think so. Like, well, you're protected when you hire a certified coach. The coach is protected and the client's protected, because the client can go to the International Coach Federation and put in a claim, right? They can put in a complaint. So it's really important that you're protecting yourself as the consumer and that you get educated on that. And because coaching is now a buzzword, and there's a lot of people that are coaches that have never even taken a coaching course, but they're using the word because it's the N word to use.
I went through a little bit of an arc earlier on because there's that monkey see, monkey do problem that I have with I get to talk to a lot of people. So there's a lot of inspiration. There's a lot of influence. And so for the first like 10 to 15 episodes, I thought, hey, this coaching business seems pretty good. Maybe I should get into this. And then another 15 episodes go by. I thought, it's okay. And never mind. Stay in my lane. But I think what's attractive about it, and I hate to be blunt, but this is the only way I'm going to get to the truth, which is it just seems like an easy job. By that I mean I don't have to invest a lot of gear. I don't have to leave my home, and it also, and this is the most blunt, I don't have to be right. I just have to say whatever I can say, and by luck, right, I maybe the person will be steered in the right direction. That's what I went through, going through this very specific. And I would actually argue a higher than average amount of influence and exposure to professionals in the space. So, what do you see? First of all, how much of it am I right? And then, what do you see a lot of people trying to enter the space? What are some of the missteps that they're taking early on?
I think you're dead on with why people want to enter it.
Mm-hmm.
I think what people don't realize is that they can take a 3 month, they think they can take a 3 months coaching course and then they're a coach. They got a badge of honor. It's like it doesn't work that way, because we're changing our internal systems. We're changing the pathways in the frontal lobe of the brain with how we show up with a client. We're learning to be curious versus think we know the answer. You got to be way more inclusive, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to stop the whole mind chatter stuff and be fully present. I mean, it takes work to just be present with somebody. Doesn't mean you even have to be talking, right? It's all an energetic thing. And so, how do you begin to embody that and practice it in your life? It takes work. It takes deliberate attention. It's kind of like learning how to allow instead of control. It's easier to control, isn't it?
If I try to explain to you how Fortnite works, and not everything is so easy to control. Some of these kids, the things that they do. I'm a nerd. I'm a gamer. I'm just gonna come out right out and say it.
Well, and that's the benefit, right? For your brain,
Yeah.
because you can learn to flex that way and expand. But not everybody's that way. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people think a coach tells you what to do. It's like wrong. It's not about us being the expert. It's about recognizing the client's the expert and instilling that in the questions so that the client recognizes they're the expert. We want them to see their own brilliance.
Oh, wow, that's actually pretty cool. I never heard it contextualized by that before. It just got me thinking about how, as a freelancer, I do have a number of client relationships that I've built up over the years, and I'm getting towards a question that came up organically, just about, I guess, the personal balance side of it. And so I'll give an example. So one fella, he's probably my longest client. I've been editing his Green Bay Packers podcast for the last like 6 years, and as a result, I've become a fan of the Green Bay Packers. Like I said, monkey see, monkey do. And he won't upgrade his microphone. I tell him every year, upgrade your microphone. It is the thing that is holding you back. And I'm this close to sending an email where I say, if you don't upgrade your microphone for this next season, I'm going to start taking hostages. Now, I don't know, I don't know if I'm going to go through with that, but I'm like, please just upgrade the microphone. And I really enjoy that, actually. I enjoy that there's a little bit more of that blend of like, yeah, we're still professionals. We still produce professional results, but we have a cadence. We have a rapport. Like we're kidding with each other, and at the same time, it also allows me to break some of that, I guess, politeness barrier and just say, you've got to do this. I'm not doing you a favor unless I tell you this. I so
Yeah.
and it really enriches the life over time, because all of these clients are now, yeah, some of them have become more familial, more friendly to me. Not like I've never like hung out, played games with any of my clients, but it is an interesting blend of that. And I think that's something that I don't know if would be coaches are ready for, is how much of that personal connection builds up over time. So with your legacy of experience, has that been a challenge for you? Is just, where do you draw that personal professional line for your clients?
Well, I mean, definitely, because I mean, a lot of my clients tell me things they don't even tell their partners, right? I'm kind of the confidant. It's things that are stuck in their head. And but there's a level of respect, right? There's confidentiality. I mean, we abide by a code of ethics. Everything we talk about is confidential. And so while there's a human connection and an intimacy, if you will, right, about what we're experiencing, I don't go and typically hang out with my clients, right?
Mhm.
Um, it's more about, it's kind of like caring for their soul, if that makes sense.
Well, I'll tell you how I'm making sense of it, because I don't just want to say yes, right? I want to show you how I hear it. Our souls were in our vessels for now, but our souls will obviously be in other vessels and other forms in the future. So what we're setting up now is part of that long term guidance for how people might reform themselves later on, not in this life, but even in continued life. So a lot of these a lot of the work that is being done here, it really varies from the very specific and technical things that people can action on a day to day basis, with those holistic,
Yep.
long term. Where are you going as an entity in this existence?
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people, they'll start practicing certain communication strategies they come up with, like the guy asking questions, right? Well, he started asking his kids more questions versus telling them what to do. Shifted everything in the relationship with the kid.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's their life lessons they're learning that they can incorporate. I had one individual that told me, "Oh my God, my wife's like, man, I really like this new thing you're doing. I don't have to, you're not being defensive when I ask you about something. It's like you're being way more curious and I really like it." I mean, he came to the call and said, "My wife's loving that I'm doing this," because he was shifting his stance where he always came from when he communicated. So, yeah, it's life changing. It's not just work changing.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to throw myself into the crucible on this one, because I have been accused of in the past of defensive behavior, and some of this is personality as well. If I'm on a soccer field, I typically end up as a strong defenseman, that manifests in the way I play games, and so there are strengths to this. And what I find personally frustrating about, if I'm arguing with somebody and they tell me I'm being defensive, I'm like, well, yeah, because you're being offensive. So I'm just trying to like kind of find the counterbalance there. So can you speak to maybe like what is an ideal time for that trait to come out, and then how we've been misusing it. Because I would, I don't know, I just don't feel like every situation where someone's being defensive is necessarily bad, but I just think it tends to be a sign that something else is going wrong as well.
Well, it depends. It depends on the situation.
Yeah.
Like in a game, right? I mean, that's a whole different situation. But it also depends on the energy of what you're feeling in the room with that individual, right? And it's really important you're acknowledging if that person is angry or upset. It's important you're naming what's happening because that automatically helps diffuse it. And then to start getting curious. It's just like your client with the microphone.
Hmm.
I'd be asking, what's stopping you from getting a new microphone? I'd get to the core of the issue with him not buying a microphone.
You know what? I actually am going to do that. I'm going to do that.
Because just telling him, it's like you're nagging.
Right.
Nobody wants to be nagged. It's like he's tuning you out. Whatever. I don't care what Joseph says. Right. But it's like, I'm just curious, what's stopping you from buying a new microphone? Maybe it's, some excuse. Well, what's the perception you want to give on your podcast? What's the perception of yourself as a podcaster that you want to give? Like, I mean, just start asking these deeper questions because then you can see, yeah, I really should get a new microphone because it's going to make me sound way better or whatever.
Hmm.
But it's the thought of being curious versus telling. We've been in a telling paradigm for so long and it's just not going to work in the future. And it's not the way to build bridges and trust
Hmm.
and unification.
I'm glad I put myself on the on the grill for that one because it is good actionable feedback, and I even noticed that I was perpetuating the issue, which is, well, I am being a nag, I'm being aggro about it. So because I'm coming from a heightened state of offense, and I'm causing either indifference or defensiveness, that is the other half of the issue too. So yeah, no, that's perfectly valid. See, that's why I love doing what I do, because I just get all this free consulting. Everybody, what can I say? Give me 5 minutes to, give me some feedback, right?
I'm
So
curious what your client will say.
I'll email you. I'll let you know. Although I would want to wait until I'm on a call with him, because I do, even
Yeah.
I got the voice right. So we're closing in on, what are we at? Okay, so we're closing in on the last 10 minutes of it, and so there are a couple of technical platform ones that we make a habit of asking. But there was one that I chambered very, very early on in the episode about leadership. And I wanted to share my personal theory with you to see what's your take on it. If it's Swiss cheese by the time we're done talking about the idea, we'll see. So with leadership, and one of the things that we established is that there's a lot of lateral influence now. So it's not necessarily strictly top down. And it reminded me of soccer, which I brought up briefly. Now you have a captain, you have coaches, yeah, you have the person who owns the team. So there are people who have the fixed leadership or management role. So that's all stipulated. But I found that leadership really changes based on who's got the ball. Because who's got the ball is about to make the next decision and is going to influence the outcome of the game. So over the course of I don't know how many people are on each side. I think it's like 8 or 12. It's a larger number than like a hockey team. Well, whoever's got the ball is in control. And that to me got me thinking about leadership as a more of a fluid state rather than a solid state. Is the idea that not one person is going to be the leader the entire time. Sometimes some people maybe are a little bit stronger early on in a project, and then they defer leadership to somebody else during the midpoint, and then somebody else can take it home. So that's the theory that I'm working on right now, and I'm wondering if there is a similar theory, or if in what way do you feel like leadership really needs to change at its core?
Well, I think leadership is really about accessing the brilliance of your people. A true successful leader is determined by his succession plan. How many people are getting promoted under him or her,
Mhm.
right? How are they growing their people? Your people are your business. And so, how are you building that and creating a unified team where we trust each other and we have each other's back? And you can come in and tell me you can have a hard conversation with me, even if I'm the leader and I have the ball, and I'm going to listen to you. Doesn't mean I'm going to agree with you. Maybe a difficult conversation. And I know I have the ultimate decision, but it doesn't mean I'm going to be closed. It means I'm going to be open to accessing the brilliance that surrounds me. Because eventually they're the ones that are going to get promoted.
Hmm.
They're the ones that are creating the success for the company. So why wouldn't I want to build more trust with them?
Just saying succession, the image that popped into my mind is watching birds migrate. There's one
Yeah.
front too, is preventing the wind from getting in everybody else's faces. Then eventually that leading bird gets tired, goes to the back. Somebody else is ready for it. So the better you are a leader when it's your turn, the better somebody else can lead when it's their turn.
Yeah.
I always appreciate when I hear that people are doing complimentary discovery sessions. Considering how valuable the time across the board that my guests have been, what I'd like to know is, do you have expectations for what people need to bring to the table if they're going to sign up for a discovery call?
Well, typically, if people set up a discovery call with me, I'll send them a kind of an intake doc, short, quick, just to get an idea of what is even motivating them to have a call with me, right? What are they struggling with? What are they wanting to achieve out of engaging a coach? And then so that the discovery call can be more about diving into that and then how I would work with them. Some discovery calls, I'm doing a 10-minute coaching session so they can see how I coach. It's really a conversation about where they are now and where they want to go.
And then the other one that I wanted to also hear a bit more about before I start closing out, and some of this was semi asked, but sometimes I think it's important to ask a question formally, just in case a key detail was missed, because we mentioned a little bit earlier about how being being credentialed and giving someone that protection, that peace of mind, that if there is an issue, we can go to the board. What would you say really like stuck out to you as part of your learning when you were building up your credentials? Like, were maybe a lesson or a teaching or something that people are just not going to get if they're not going through the formal education?
Because, there's a code of ethics that we have to abide by. So it's like, what is that code and how do we even embody it? That's one.
Hmm.
But there's also, one of the competencies is embodying a coaching mindset. How are we doing our own work? How are what's our reflective practice so that we can actually be present? How are we doing certain things in our own life, certain practices, so that we can be even better with you? Our job is just to be a vessel. It's to be a clear channel for our intuition to come through. It's
Hmm.
not about knowing which questions to ask. It's not about being distracted. It's about showing up, listening to you, hearing what's under your words, and asking questions to seek to know you more.
Hmm.
And in training, that's what you learn how to do.
I'm sorry, this question popped into my mind. I'm asking this one purely for fun of it because I just visualized that a dentist, for instance, when the time comes where the dentist needs work done, I don't think he's going to sit in the chair and start operating on himself. I'm pretty sure that's illegal. But when you feel like you're in the need for coaching, do you have other coaches who work with you? Is there like
No, I'm a solopreneur. I did not want to build a coaching bench. Did not want to do that. So I have my own business and I work with my own clients and then I work with some agencies. I partner with some agencies that bring me clients and
Mhm.
I have a huge coaching community I'm a part of and
Okay, fair enough. So with that, the last question that we always like to cover is just in terms of your community and the work that you're doing right now. What would you say are some of like the either the day to day issues that you're facing, and like this is get very granular and technical if that's the answer to the question. Likewise, some other people like to do the more high minded answers to the question too. So what would you say are some of the challenges that you're facing on a daily basis?
it's so funny because I decided to just quit marketing my business because I am so sick of it.
Hmm.
And it's this whole concept of the more I relax and the more I surrender, the more I open to possibility versus trying to channel it and force it and, you know, and it has been so liberating because I'm finally doing it my way and the business is coming in. But for me, I'm really promoting my online course. That's really what I'm focused on. I've got a career coaching certification course I'm working on. So it's more online platform stuff that I'm
Mhm.
promoting because I want it to get to more people that can't afford coaching, and that want that touch point and that curriculum, those tools and resources to do their own inner work.
For the next 5 years, would you say that's your main goal, or do you have a particular vision for your next 5 years?
Well, actually, I'm definitely more online presence as far as my own curriculum. But there's also, I live in Golden, Colorado, and there's a women's center that's opening up here. And I'm very passionate about empowering the women in our culture. So many are not using their voice, not really tapping into their own brilliance. And so I'm going to be teaching there. I'm going to be teaching and I'm going to be coaching and I'm going to be a part of that. And I'm really excited because it's right here in my community. It's not,
Mhm.
across the world. Um, and that's what I'm really excited. And just continuing to serve those in need, because coaching is becoming more and more present in everybody's life.
I appreciate the feedback, the legitimate feedback that I got today. So there's that. But altogether, I appreciate the time that you shared with us today. So as a courtesy, I'll give you the floor for one more second in case there was any other like points or observations or anything that's kind of floating in your brain that you wanted to make sure is articulated. And then otherwise, let the audience know how they can find you online.
Yeah, I would just say, don't be afraid to follow what's happening in your heart, because that's the direction we're all headed. And the sooner you do it, the better. And get support if you need it,
Mhm.
because, the ride we're on, it's just going to speed up. There's going to be more crisis, there's going to be more chaos, and we've got to be the anchor in the storm. So how are you building that anchor internally? Because that's key. And then how they can get a hold of me, my website is katiebsmith.com. My email is katie@katiebsmith.com. And I'm on Substack. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram and Facebook and all that, but I don't really advertise or push it over there.
Yeah, I have a mixed relationship with Facebook. I remember way back when like messages were more like an inbox. Like you were sending people like like emails rather than chats. And so I would see people that I haven't messaged in years and be like, yeah, well, we can run into each other again at some point. I'm like, wow, that's our chat now. It just completely changes the mentality of it. Anyways, that has been an episode of the Impactful Coaching Podcast. As always, this is a distinct honor and a privilege for me to be able to share time, share knowledge, and help try to get these messages out. That's what I feel most proud about doing this work. So if anybody wants to email me, well, actually, you can find Joseph Iani on LinkedIn if you want to talk to me about something unrelated to the podcast. But otherwise, you can email Joseph at impactfulcoachingpodcast.com. That is JOSEPH. The rest of it is spelled the way you expect. And it is our endeavor to ensure that in whatever way you are helping others, we want you to be as impactful as you can be.